Hello, everyone. How confident are you as a leader? How can you build confidence and trust with your team, especially if you're a new leader? Welcome to another interview in our Leadership Professional Development Series to help you speak, sound, and look like a leader. I'm Linda Katz-Wilner, founder of Successfully Speaking, and I help leaders and aspiring leaders improve their communication skills and executive presence. Today, our guest is a friend of mine, Kim Fabian. Kim is the Chief Experience Officer at Elevatr Leadership Consulting. Kim and I met, I, I can't believe, Kim, that it's been several decades ago when we were both in the Executive Women's Network. And I've seen Kim shift over the years to all of her different roles. She is truly an expert in leadership. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me, Linda. It's great to reconnect in this way.
Yes, absolutely. And Kim, why don't we start off by talking a little bit about self talk? Because I know I work with my clients a lot about this. Some of the messages that we tell ourselves, and sometimes that can affect our ability to communicate effectively and demonstrate that executive presence. So, what would you say are some examples of things that leaders might be saying to themselves that are blocking them from expanding into their new roles?
Well, you're so right, especially with new leaders. I think there's this switch that we expect to click on when we are promoted into a leadership role that automatically gifts us with the skills that we're going to, and that really isn't the case. It's really necessary to build a foundation for being able to do what you need to do as a leader before actually being able to do it. And key to that foundation is really what we're telling ourselves. So with some of the folks that I coach or that I have led in terms of workshops that I've taught, some of the things that new leaders are telling themselves is, I'm not sure if I can do this. I've got to fake it till I make it. My peers who used to be my colleagues, I'm now overseeing them, so they might resent me. I have to do it all. I can never do enough. And can you imagine how, if we repeatedly tell ourselves these messages, how it's going to translate in terms of our communication style and presence as a leader?
Oh, absolutely. That makes so much sense. And I love what you said about people say fake it till you make it. And it sounds so inauthentic. But
Right.
Amy Cuddy had quoted it differently. And I really love that. And that is fake it until you become it.
Mm.
And that might help them. That there's nothing wrong with faking it or putting on a certain appearance because after a while you start to feel that and become that. So I
It's like practice. Yeah,
yes.
it's like practice. I mean, from me coming from a place of authenticity, faking it isn't something that I even want to put up
Mhm.
here. It's grow into it. And so if you think about some of those beliefs that we just talked about, things like I can never do enough,
Mhm.
or I have to be perfect, or I'm not ready, for this, or am I really qualified for this?
Mhm.
Things that we might say instead that are still believable are, people believe I can do this.
Mhm.
I have potential for this. I'm looking forward to growing and learning into this new role. I can't wait to lead the people who used to be my peers in a way that empowers them more than other leaders might have done. So
Mhm.
there are ways that we can reframe that opens us up more to the enthusiasm and the growth mindset of it, as opposed to adding that fear and doubt into
Mm.
our systems. And
Or
the other end of the spectrum is people who are overly authoritative and
mhm.
all of a sudden like get this power rush of, oh, now it's my way.
Mhm.
And that's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum.
clearly not the skills you want as a leader. Or the people who you lead do not want you to have those
Exactly.
skills. And so I do like that you caught me on that word or stopped me on that word about faking it. But I truly believe people need to just have skills and know and have confidence in the skills that they
Yes, and
have.
practice the skills. And, a big message is to people who are hiring new leaders out there is to provide some basis of training
Mhm,
for people to be able to grow and develop into that role.
mhm. Something else you mentioned that is something I help people with public speaking, and that is, first of all, why me? Why am I the leader? Like, why was I chosen? And if you start to think it's not because you're incompetent,
That's
hopefully that directs you towards the positives, and then take some of those quote unquote affirmations and keep reminding yourself that you
yes.
belong there. I'm sure
Yeah.
that helps.
It absolutely helps. And I think it's really important that you don't fall into that toxic positivity and have, an affirmation like, I'm awesome, I'm
Mm,
great,
mhm.
I'm the best, I'm perfect. It's not about that. It's about creating something that is more empowering and yet still believable to you, something that feels true.
And so tell me about that because you're talking about it's very important for you to address the authenticity. Tell me a little bit about that with the trust and how as a new leader who is so
Yeah.
hesitant to show their vulnerability, how do you coach them?
I would say that the definition to me of authenticity and vulnerability is sharing your humanness in
Mhm,
a professional way. So it's not about laying all the cards on the table or giving too much information. It's about relating to people, sharing your humanness, but in a way that still allows you to have a professional and appropriate leadership presence.
mhm,
There's a fine line anymore, I think, about the whole oversharing.
mhm,
Um, and, it also is very lonely as a leader,
mhm,
especially if you're a CEO or an executive director and you're new to that role. You really don't have those people that you can vent to. And it's important to establish the boundaries that you're not venting to your team.
mhm,
Sometimes, if you're venting to your peers or your superiors, it seems unprofessional or that you can't do the job that you are assigned to do. So, it's important to have trusted colleagues and mentors to be
mhm,
able to have those types of conversations. That's not the kind of transparency that you would share with your team as a leader. It's more of a level of vulnerability and authenticity that allows them to see that you might struggle with the same things that
mhm.
they struggle with, and how can you work together to overcome those things?
So it's vulnerability, but it's also knowing that there are boundaries.
Yeah,
Be careful of those boundaries.
absolutely.
What would you say to the leader, the new leader, who is younger than the people that are reporting to him or her? How do they deal with that? The age difference or the millennial leader with the other
Mhm.
people on the team who are older than
Well,
that
all
person?
leaders have different styles. So I think one of the key things to do when you are entering into a new leadership role is ask people about their style, or even
Mm,
take some of the multitude of personality tests that are out there and explore the different styles of the people on your team.
mhm,
And also share how you like to be communicated to and what your style is. Because as we know, not everybody is the same style. That can create some conflict, but the more awareness that we have, it allows us to say, oh, that's just the way that Kim acts or Linda
mhm,
is.
mhm,
And I can work better with this person when I respond in that style than if I just respond to what is most familiar to me. And I
mm,
think that is a key role of a leader, not to expect everyone to fall into lockstep with their style,
mhm.
but to learn how the team works and functions and create an effective dynamic that meets everyone where they are.
Flexibility
Yeah, adaptability,
and
flexibility
adaptability.
for sure. Yeah.
What would you tell the new leader, doesn't have to be a young leader, but a new leader, what they should focus on and practice or make part of every day so that they take on that role with the confidence that they
That
need?
is a great question. I would say the first thing to practice is listening.
Hmm.
And it is something that I still practice
Hmm.
to this very day. The folks who have worked for me will tell you that I'm a driving personality. I believe that I synthesize things quickly and make decisions quickly, which sometimes can make me seem curt
Hmm.
or like I'm moving them forward more quickly than they've had the opportunity to really explain their position. So it's ironic when we talk about communicating effectively that keeping your mouth closed is one of the greatest tips that we can offer to people, and asking great questions to tease out even more.
Hmm. And clarify to make sure
Mhm.
that we are understanding what they're telling us.
Excellent point, and something that's often forgotten because we make assumptions,
Hmm.
right?
Well, we know. We know better.
Of
We
course.
know how it should be, so it's my way, and I don't have to listen. Or the typical, we're not really listening to understand. We're just waiting to reply with what we
Yes.
know is best, which is
Yes.
a false notion that we have
Mhm.
to be careful. And I think I do a lot of work with listening, and the challenge is we were never taught to listen. That wasn't a skill you learn with reading, writing, and arithmetic. Listening didn't come in there. So it's fair to say that we don't have the training in it, but that seems to be the biggest skill, from my standpoint, of something people have to learn.
Yes. And it will color all of the rest of your communications by learning
Mhm.
that one simple or
Right,
difficult, seemingly simple skill.
right. What would you say are some of the behaviors or patterns or communication styles that undermine a leader?
Well, for a new leader in particular, even some of the people that I coach, I've observed them going into settings with stakeholders, their boards, their teams, and doing things that I would discourage them to do. And one I would say is over apologizing for
Mm,
things that are outside of your control.
mhm.
So let's say you have a board member who's coming in for a meeting with you and it's pouring down rain. And she gets there and you say, "Oh, I'm so sorry you had to drive here in the rain." No, you're not sorry. Like that's not your fault.
Mhm.
But what you could say instead is showing appreciation. I am so thankful and so appreciate you coming out on this awful day to be here with me. It means a lot. Like, do you just see how that totally creates a new presence for a leader? For one of the organizations I'm working with right now, we had a situation where we're running a big event and someone did not go through the proper channels to purchase a ticket. And instead, this person made a donation, did not say what it was for or allocated for or anything. And we got a call a couple weeks later from one of our board members who this woman had called and said, "I'm angry because I haven't been recognized for the
Ah,
seat that I just bought to your big event."
mm,
And so, look, that wasn't our fault, and that was an honest mistake on their part. But the interesting part of it is that we did not like apologize, like, "Oh, we're so sorry for that mistake." What we said was, "Thank you so much for making that aware of us. We'll take care of it
mm,
immediately."
mhm.
So it's more of shifting that apologetic tone to either an appreciation tone or a can do kind
That's
of tone.
wonderful. That's wonderful because even with speaking, don't get up and apologize for anything. Nobody needs to hear all that. They just want you to show up. And so I
Exactly.
like the idea that it's a can do. Don't focus on it unless you truly did something that really hurt somebody. That's a different
Yeah.
story. But even
Another, oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say another one totally related to that is when people are asked a question and they don't know the answer and they say, "Oh, I should know that." Instead, just say, "I don't have that information off the top of my head, and I'll get back to you tomorrow with that data." Again, that can do
Right.
kind of attitude. Don't undermine yourself
And
by
and
using
don't
those
be
words.
afraid to say, "I don't have the answer right now." but I
Correct.
will get it for you. Is
Yeah, I mean, we have unrealistic expectations of how much we can hold here,
Mhm,
and it's
mhm,
perfectly normal and human, to not know immediately every
mhm,
answer.
mhm. And I guess I always tell people, own it. Own the challenges that you might have. It's okay. You could acknowledge that elephant
Yeah.
in the room, just move on with it because you don't want
Absolutely, and I
feel
think
sorry for you.
that's part of the authenticity we talked about earlier and
Mhm,
the vulnerability. That just shows that you are human
mhm,
and it allows people to relate to you. I mean, the whole theme of our talk today is building confidence and
mhm,
trust, and that is a key skill to be
mhm.
able to do that.
All right, I have another question for you before we start wrapping up. And there's a lot of stress for leaders. There's a lot of stress for everybody, but added stress for leaders. And how can they effectively manage this stress and promote that sense of well being in this crazy world that we live in today?
And it's just getting
Mhm,
crazier, and it really the main message that I have for leaders in their own well-being is leaders lead thyself. Because if you're not taking care of your own well being, studies have shown that stress and burnout will permeate through teams and organizations. So, leaders need to set the example of well being and they need to establish parameters that help people feel safe in taking care of
mhm,
themselves. Things like we're not going to email after 6 p.m. unless it's an emergency, or same thing for weekends or sacred, unless it's an emergency. We take our PTO and value our vacations,
mhm,
and we talk about them after we get back so we can share and how wonderful, that opportunity to refresh was. I also think for leaders, a big part of believe it or not, well-being is just being clear with expectations and with what the priorities are. That is a
mhm.
huge thing you can do for yourself and for your team because it eliminates assumption, it eliminates questions, it creates a clear, motivating, and empowering path forward.
Wonderful, wonderful information. And now here's my question I like to ask everybody in this series. Since it is Speak, Sound, and Look Like a Leader, what do you think is an essential skill in order to speak, sound, and look like a leader?
Well, I appreciate you providing me this question in advance, Linda. And I will say I've been thinking about it. Ironically, I was doing a yoga practice just a few days ago, and the instructor said that to release your resistance to softening.
Hmm.
And I thought that is an amazing tool for a leader to soften because so often we think we have to force, to push, to drive. But when we step back and pause and release that forcing, that anxiety, the stress that we put on ourselves to perform is when the magic really happens. And that's truly when you can create a calming leadership presence for everyone who is around you. So I would say that softening, that pause,
Mm.
will allow you to listen better, to create more thoughtful responses, make better decisions, and really build that trust and confidence among your team.
Wonderful answer. I'm glad I gave you time to think about it because I didn't expect that. And it makes us think all of the yoga or the exercise or taking walks or taking a hike or just decompressing helps us so much with our creativity
Mhm.
and our ability to show up. Oh,
That's so true.
I
Yeah,
love it.
case in point.
I love it. Kim, how can people get in touch with you?
The best way is through my website at elevatorinsight.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn at Kim Fabian. That's a great way to keep in touch. And we also, as part of that, we offer a special email newsletter once per month that you can sign up for on our website. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn to get our latest blog posts and just daily inspirations.
And you have wonderful inspirations. I think it's every Monday you post some mindful.
We post a Mindful Monday post for mindful leadership every Monday, and we sprinkle other things in during the course of the week as
And what a
well.
great way to start your week.
I think so.
Well, thank you so much, Kim, for this information. I know everybody's going to benefit from it. It's wonderful. And I love how each interview I have comes up with different ideas and great responses to that question I asked.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a
Sure,
pleasure.
the same here. And please join us again in 2 weeks on November 7th. And on November 7th, I'm going to have Kashana Marrow, who is the president of Simply Kashana, as my next guest. Kashana and I present together. We work together a lot, and it's an interview you should not miss because we will be talking about the communication competence of a leader. And that's something that is very near and dear to my heart as well. So until then, let's think about the ways that we can build our confidence, build our trust, soften ourselves, and don't become rigid to become better leaders. Thanks again, Kim.
You bet.